This is Jarrod Horak, and this is my latest Preakness 2024 video. This is my second video today for Wednesday, May 15th. In my first video earlier today, I discussed the Today's Racing Digest pace and final time ratings for all of the Preakness runners, and I also mentioned that morning line favorite Muth has scratched out of the race. He came down with a fever after traveling from California. He had an 18-hour travel from California to Maryland. And when he arrived at Pimlico, he had a fever. They had to scratch him out of the race. So we're down to a field of 8 for the Preakness Stakes. And most likely Kentucky Derby winner Mystik Dan is going to be the favorite. And also in that video, I mentioned that there are a couple coupon codes if you're interested in the complete digest for Black-Eyed Susan Day, May 17th, Preakness Day, May 18th. Both of those complete digest products at Pimlico at todaysracingdigest.com. You can get $5 off the May 17th card at Pimlico, $10 off of the Preakness Day card. Now, in the description in this video, I'll include the coupon codes and where to go to get that complete digest for both of those days, or you can just watch that first video. I went through in detail on how to use the coupon codes for both of those products. And then also, I'm going to be out live at Pimlico multiple days this week. I was there on Tuesday. I posted some stuff on my YouTube channel. If you went over and see my shorts, just click there. And I did a video of Mystik Dan. I had like a 1-minute, quick video talking about Mystik Dan. I got to see him yesterday. Today I got to see Just Steel. I'm going to be back at Pimlico on Thursday, and I'm going to do more videos. I'm going to do my final analysis video on site at Pimlico tomorrow. And then for Friday, I'm going to be going out to Pimlico again and trying to get more Preakness footage. So keep checking my YouTube channel, my personal website, therunawayhorse.com, and todaysracingdigest.com on their Preakness page. I have coverage at all of those spots for 2024 Preakness Week. And if you want to purchase my analysis for Preakness Day and Black-Eyed Susan Day, go on over to todaysracingdigest.com. You can get my full cards there, or at my personal website, therunawayhorse.com, on my sales page. I'm doing a full card for Black-Eyed Susan Day. I completed that earlier today. I just have to go through and proofread that and then upload it to the site. And then my Preakness full card will be done tomorrow. So you can get those products at todaysracingdigest.com or at my personal website, therunawayhorse.com, on my sales page. I've been doing these full cards for many years, been selling full cards since 1998. I've had a lot of success in the Triple Crown Series, especially the Preakness Stakes, my hometown race. I've hit it many times, and I have good success with the full cards as well. I've been to Pimlico literally thousands of times over the years, and hopefully I'm going to have another successful Preakness week, and we'll have to see how all that plays out. But Friday looks dry right now, Black-Eyed Susan Day, but then Preakness Day, 90% chance of rain, and we'll have to see, and it's definitely looking like it's going to be a wet track. And now we'll go through and we'll discuss the horses that may or may not like a wet track. Now, Mugatu, number 1, he's an outsider in this race. He's 1 for 12 lifetime. He's never run on a wet track. So he's one that doesn't have any experience on a wet track. His lone win was on all-weather ground. So we just don't know how he's going to handle that at all. He's 0 for 4 on turf, 0 for 3 on fast dirt. Doesn't have any speed, and he looks completely overmatched. And the wet track certainly doesn't seem that it's going to move him up at all. Now, Uncle Heavy, number 2, he does have experience on a wet track. He's actually 2 for 2 over a wet track. On a good track at Parks late last year, he was in a Pennsylvania-bred stakes race. It was a $200,000 race, and the track was good, and he rallied to win that one by 1.25 lengths. And then in the Grade 3 Wither Stakes, it was muddy at Aqueduct, and he was wide, and he was able to just get up and win by a nose. So Uncle Heavy's one that handles a wet track. He can sit more towards the back of the pack in this race, probably saving ground under his new rider, Irad Ortiz Jr. So he's handled a wet track before, and now we'll have to see if he handles the Pimlico wet track. Now, Catching Freedom, number 3, he's run on a wet track 1 time, and he ended up finishing 3rd, and that was in the slop in the Risen Star Stakes. And in that race, he rallied from 8th place in a 12-horse field to finish 3rd, beating 1.75 lengths. Sierra Leone won that one. Track Phantom was 2nd. Now, Track Phantom was out there up on the pace. Sierra Leone was rallying from back of the pack along with Catching Freedom, and Sierra Leone would then come back and just miss by a nose in the Kentucky Derby. So for Catching Freedom, he handles the wet surface. Flavien Prat's going to stay aboard. He was aboard in the Louisiana Derby. He won on a fast track, and then in his last start, the Kentucky Derby, he finished 4th. Whether it's fast or it's dry, Catching Freedom's pretty consistent, and you can expect him to make a decent late run. If he can get enough pace help, he can run a decent race. I mentioned that number 4, Muth, has been scratched out of the race. Number 5, Mystik Dan, your Kentucky Derby winner. He's run on a wet track one time. That was in the mud in the Southwest Stakes. And from post 9, he was able to work his way over to the rail under Brian Hernandez Jr. The rail opened up, he scooted through and opened up a commanding lead, and he was able to win that race by 8 lengths. And then he came back and finished 3rd in the Arkansas Derby from an outer post, rallying from off the pace. Then in the Kentucky Derby in a 20-horse field, the pace was pretty solid. He was back in 8th early, and then he moved up to 6th, and then he was able to go right up the inside, just like he did in the Southwest Stakes, open up a clear lead, and then just hold on to win by a nose over Sierra Leone and Forever Young in a 3-horse thrilling finish. So Mystik Dan, if he gets a wet track, at least we know he handled it in the Southwest. Now, no two wet tracks are alike, so you have to remember that just because he ran such a huge race in the mud at Oaklawn Park in February at a mile and a 16th doesn't mean that he's going to run that same race on a wet track at Pimlico on May 18th at a mile and 3/16. We'll have to see how all that plays out. He's coming back in 2 weeks. It just depends how the pace scenario plays out, what kind of trip he gets. Many factors go into the final outcome of a horse race. And Mystik Dan, obviously, if you like him, no reason not to like him. He was excellent in the mud in the Southwest. He just won the Kentucky Derby. He's sharp. He's got some positional speed, decent enough post position as well. There's things to like about him, but I don't know from a value standpoint. He was 18-1 in the Kentucky Derby. Now he's going to be the favorite coming back in 2 weeks. We'll have to see how all that plays out. But just strictly from a wet track standpoint of basing all of that on that Southwest Stakes, if he runs that kind of race, obviously he would be a top contender. Now, Seize the Gray has run on a wet track twice, both of them at Saratoga. And this kind of goes into play on how I said a wet track one day doesn't play the same as a wet track another day. Seize the Gray, Saratoga in the slop last July, 6.5 furlongs. He was able to get right up on the pace and win by a length and 3/4, breaking his maiden in that race. Same track, different kind of wet track. Instead of the slop at Saratoga in July when he ran that maiden victory, in August at Saratoga, in the mud, in the Skidmore Stakes, he didn't run nearly as fast. He was the favorite. He rallied from off the pace. He finished 3rd there. So that was a decent enough effort. And we know with those 2 starts that he can certainly handle a wet track. And then the Pate Mile last time, he cut back to a 1-turn mile. He was battling up on the pace. And then he settled into a stalking position. And then he was best late by a length and 3/4. So he's stretching back out in distance. He's handled a wet track before on 2 occasions, and especially well in his maiden victory in the slop. Just Steel, he's run on a wet track 2 times. 7 furlongs last fall at Churchill Downs in an optional claiming race. He rallied from off the pace to finish 3rd, beaten 8 lengths. Otto the Conqueror would win that race, and he would go on and win the Springboard Mile. Honor Marie was clearly second best. Honor Marie would come back and win the Grade 2 Kentucky Jockey Club Stakes. And then Just Steel came out of that race, and he won the Ed Brown Stakes. So that was a productive race that day in the slop, and that Ed Brown was on a fast track. And then his other start in the mud was against Mystik Dan in the Southwest Stakes. He was no match for Mystik Dan. He was stalking from post 10, and he was beaten 8 lengths, but he did hold on for 2nd over Liberal Art, who was closing from off the pace. So Just Steel definitely handles a wet track. And then in the Arkansas Derby on a fast track, he was 2nd at 32-1. Then in the Kentucky Derby, he got cooked on a pace duel. So now he's switching riders, reconnecting with his winning rider, Joel Rosario, who was aboard for both of his wins, his maiden win at Saratoga, and then his victory in the Ed Brown Stakes. So Joel Rosario rides Just Steel well, and he handles a wet track as well. Tuscan Gold's only run 3 times, and they were all fast track starts, so we don't know quite how he'll handle it. Same with Imagination. He's had 6 career starts, 2 wins, 4 seconds, all in Southern California. He's never shipped before, and then he also has never run on a wet track. So looking at the pace scenario of this race, I don't see a lot of pace. I think Imagination, a horse like that, his wet track pedigree is okay. For him, maybe his best chance to handle the wet track under Frankie Dettori is just to go out there and try to wire the field. Keep all the mud off of him. Just get out there, stay clean, get the jump on everybody, open up a clear early lead, and keep on going. I can see him doing that. Tuscan Gold, if you like him and you think he can handle all the wet track, one of the ways that I think he will be able to handle it is to be able to stalk, stay out in the clear, keep that mud from getting on his face, and just work out a nice outer stalking type trip. And I mentioned the others that already handle it, and Mystik Dan handled it the best out of any of the runners that we've seen in this field. So if he runs back to the Southwest, he runs that kind of race, and like he ran in the Kentucky Derby as well, if he has that good trip like that, he certainly is going to be a big contender on a wet track. But don't expect a bunch of value, because now that Muth is out, Mystik Dan becomes the favorite. So if you do like him, maybe you want to try to beat some of the other favorites, and you might want to try to use some price sources with him and hope that you can make a decent little score in the Preakness Stakes. So that's my look at the possibility of a wet track. We don't know how the track's going to play, so that's another thing to look for. Let's watch all the earlier races. The Preakness is race 13, and we'll have to see how many races stay on the turf if they get a lot of rain. But watch all of the main track races, see which lanes look good, or what kind of running styles do well on that particular day if it's a wet track. And then base your handicapping decisions on the track bias and other information like that. And that will wrap up this video. And I'll, again, keep checking my YouTube channel. I'm going to keep posting these Preakness videos throughout Preakness week. And until I see you next time, good luck at the races.